Welcome to the Rancher's Voice, presented by the Montana Stockgrowers Association. I'm Jay Bodner, MSGA's Executive Vice President.
And I'm Raylee Honeycutt, Director of Natural Resources. Join us for conversations surrounding policy, the legislature, and issues that matter most to ranching families in Montana.
Welcome to this week's episode. With Transmittal Week behind us, we're going to take a deep dive into House Bill 554. That's the bill that we worked with. Stockgrowers worked directly with Representative Josh Kazmaier, and we're bringing that to the legislature. We've had a good first hearing on that bill. We're also going to be visiting directly with Dana Darlington, and Dana is our director on our Stockgrower board out of Big Sandy. And Dana has a lot of experience with national heritage areas. He's worked on this for a number of years, and so we really look forward to his work, attending a lot of those meetings with the Big Sky Country National Heritage Area meetings, and really what he's found in that and what the concerns are.
So before we jump in, we'd like to remind you to subscribe to The Rancher's Voice, follow us on social, and make sure to like, share, and comment each of our episodes. We would love to hear from you also, so email us at Kenny, Keni, @mtbeef.org.
So we'll start with just a little background on the Big Sky Country Natural Heritage Areas. This actually started in the Great Falls area, that Cascade area, almost 5 years ago. So it's been around for a while. There's been some work that's done. It hasn't necessarily been real public for a lot of participation by the stakeholders, and that's something that's raised our concerns with landowners in that area. So currently there has been 55 national heritage areas designated by Congress since 1984. And each one is created through individual law, and there's currently no national heritage areas in Montana.
So let's chat a little bit about how we got to where we're at. This past year during Stockgrowers' annual meeting, policy was brought forward by membership for our organization to adopt policy related to the opposition of the Big Sky Country National Heritage Area. And then once that was voted on by our membership, it was adopted into policy. And then from there, Jay and I had worked with a variety of lawmakers, kind of talking about what we could bring as a solution to the legislature. And as Jay mentioned, we worked with Representative Josh Kazmaier to draft a bill to ultimately allow for state legislatures vote before a designation area kind of goes into effect.
And I think it's important when we talk about this so if you have some interest, you really should go look at the bill, House Bill 554, read the language. We'll give it to you here real quickly. Just the short rundown is: any designation by the United States National Park Service of the National Heritage Area or National Historic Trail that extends beyond federal land requires the approval of the legislature. So we want to make sure that all of that private land in these potential designations, that landowners have a voice and also the legislature has a voice.
And we understand from a federal perspective, yes, these designations do become designations through an act of Congress. However, the way that we have worded this bill, if the federal government wants to designate any federal land within our state, they are more than welcome to do that. It's once that designation moves outside of federal land that we feel it is the citizens of Montana's opportunity to speak and have that grassroots support or opposition of any designations.
Yes, certainly I think it is important because we want that, 2/3 of Montana is private lands. These designations have the potential overreach to cover all of our public land or private lands. And so we think it definitely is important.
Something else to just make sure that you're aware of is that this has been a conversation for about 5 years, and there was some movement with the proposed Big Sky Country National Heritage Area in 2016. At that time, it was a larger footprint than the proposed area currently. It included parts of Choteau, Phillips, Burgess County, as well as Cascade County and Lewis and Clark. In 2016, Fergus County and Phillips County commissions actually put together formal opposition about this proposed area, and that's when that footprint kind of shrunk down to what the proposed area is right now. Then the organization that's trying to bring forward this designation kind of went dormant for a while and then popped back up about 2-3 years ago. And so once they kind of regained momentum, and almost 24 organizations since the start of the designation conversation, they have either made resolutions or policy in opposition of this. And that includes agriculture organizations, county commissions, cities, conservation districts, realtor associations, as well as builder organizations.
Yeah, it really was a really impressive list of just broad-based landowners, business organizations that came in and shared their concerns and support for this bill. So it was a nice broad group of business owners.
So to talk just a bit more, and Jay kind of covered the main point of the bill, but the bill would just require the Montana Legislature to provide a vote on behalf of the people of Montana for proposed designations within the state. So let's talk a little bit, Jay, about how we would envision that happening if this bill were to come into law.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's important to look at maybe an example of how we envision this law if we do get this passed all the way through and the governor to sign it. We would envision, I think, in the interim committees, the legislature does have a variety of those, one being the Environmental Quality Council. I guess how we would envision this is that if there was a group that wanted to propose a heritage area in Montana, that would be brought before the interim committee. This interim committee then would have discussion on it. These interim committees also have the ability to write a committee bill. So if there was support for these type of heritage areas, they would write this this committee bill. And then that committee bill gets drafted into the legislature. So then the legislature would take this bill and it would be put into a specific committee and then move through the entire legislative process. So in that process, once again, the general public, landowners would have the opportunity in front of the interim committee. And then if it passed on, they would have the opportunity to comment and make statements in support or opposition also at the legislature.
And we think this is really important because that allows for the legislative vote that is accountable to the people. They're elected officials. They have that accountability back to the folks. And currently, as it stands now, the organization that is kind of leading the charge for this proposed area is a private, unelected, unaccountable entity that really has no accountability to anyone. And so we feel it's super important to bring that layer of additional checks and balance into the picture.
Yeah, and this really does give those individuals an opportunity to either support or oppose, and it really lays out the process for citizens to participate.
So one of the other reasons that we really feel strongly about having that checks and balance is because with a designation comes a check virtually. So these national heritage areas or trail designations, and I'm going to speak to heritage areas, they fall under the National Park Service and the Department of Interior. And so having an organization like the National Park Service kind of have uninvited influence over your private property is concerning to many people. But once a designation is put into place, an annual allocation up to $1 million can be made by the National Park Service for the designation. In doing research, the National Park Service says that their annual appropriations usually range between $150,000 and $750,000, but that's significant dollars that would be given to this unelected board to kind of manage on behalf of the heritage area, which is something that we feel needs to kind of have some additional oversight on.
Yeah, and I think that raises one of the biggest concerns that, how this money would be managed, how this heritage area would be managed is it's managed by a self-appointed, they're a private group, they're unelected, they're not accountable to any citizens. And so that raises a significant amount of concerns. If you have an issue or concern, you may or may not be heard in front of this board.
And really, for the proposed Big Sky Heritage Area, grassroots and citizens within that footprint do not feel like they've been heard. They have had trouble getting information from the group, attending the meetings sometimes. And so really we want to make this as grassroots and locally supported as possible. I think it's also important to note that we as an organization are not against heritage areas or trails designations. We just want the local voice and the grassroots folks to be able to have their voice heard and express their support or opposition.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it really just needs to be a very transparent process. And that's really what this bill will lay out for us. I mean, every step of the way, people will have their say, and then you at some point would take a vote.
So we are going to jump into our interview with Dana Darlington, who is a MSGA director and has been very involved with this Big Sky Country Heritage Area proposed designation. But before we do that, I just want to give a quick update on where the bill is. So it is House Bill 554. It has been heard in the House. It was heard the first part of March in the House Natural Resources Committee. It passed the House floor and has been transmitted to the Senate. And so we are waiting for that hearing to be scheduled on the Senate side, and then we will go through again a hearing, and hopefully a floor vote will be passed in both of those and head to the governor's desk for signature. So we will keep you posted along the way as those final steps occur.
And it has been nice to kind of see some bipartisan support for that bill also. So once again, we'll keep you informed as that bill continues to move forward.
So here's Dana Darlington and a little bit more about where he's worked on the Big Sky Country National Heritage Area.
Well, I'd like to welcome Dana Darlington to our podcast this week. Dana has a ranch up there in Big Sandy, and Dana is also on our board of directors for the Montana Stockgrowers Association. And we have certainly a topic this week that has a lot of interest within our membership. Pretty well, much broader than just Cascade County. It's one that's been affected, I think, and a lot of our members across the state have been following this issue. So I'd like to talk just a little bit about how stock growers approaches some of these issues. This one in particular, the Montana Stockgrowers did get a policy that was brought by a local affiliate, and it was brought to convention. This had a full vetting through our committees and through our entire membership and was passed. And then as we look at these kind of policies, Montana Stockgrowers looks at ways that we can implement these policies. And this one in particular, with the National Heritage Areas, we thought, what better system and what better body than to potentially write legislation and bring that to Helena.
So when we did that, we looked at a variety of different options. They're really, once you get to the legislature, there's kind of two options that you can, two paths you can go towards. The first one would be a resolution, where a resolution's more of a endorsement or stamp of support in regards to an issue, or the second would be to do a legislative bill. And after discussion with the legislature services, as well as Representative Josh Kazmaier, who is the bill sponsor, we opted to do that legislative bill to more formally create legislative oversight for national heritage areas.
Great. So let's jump right into it. We'll start with Dana. I know that certainly maybe for our listeners outside your area, you can just tell us a little bit yourself and your operation.
It's my wife and I, Lisa, and we have one son home, Coulter, and he's on one of the places, and we're just kind of getting cranked up to start the old cows calving. We got the heifers done, and it looks like the weather's going to get better. So we're just like everybody else. We're just kind of right there. Either some are going by now, and some are getting ready. So it's going to be a busy month.
Well, thanks for taking some time to sit down with us and talk about the bill that we recently testified on, which was House Bill 554. And Dana, unfortunately, this is not the first time a designation could have potentially affected your private property. You have had some history with the monuments along the river as well. So talk to us a little bit about how you were impacted by the monument designation and why this proposed heritage area designation kind of came onto your radar.
Yeah, the family ranch that my dad and my uncle bought back in the 70s is we have the White Cliffs area, which is pretty famous for people that float the river, and you'll see it pop up on a lot of the pictures, the scenic view. We just kind of worked with the BLM for years, and most of ours is probably 98% deeded down there. There's a little BLM, a little bit of state, and it's kind of a long process, but there's a camping, there's 2 vault toilets down there for campers and canoers, I guess, mostly. And we've had a really good working relationship with the BLM, even though it's on private ground. So I guess back to the monument, it was kind of threw us a curveball there. We didn't have a whole lot of time to get organized back in '99. But we did. There was a group formed out of Winifred called the Missouri River Stewards, and we had several meetings around Winifred, Big Sandy, Chinook, all the affected areas. And we even went to Helena. And I didn't testify. It was I could be wrong on this, but I think it was either the only time or the second time in history where you had a committee of Senate members and House members in the same chamber. And there was, I don't know how many people now, it's been 20 years ago, but we packed the room, and we had support from the state of Montana, recommendation not that a monument was not needed because it was already protected under a Wild and Scenic River Act. And we kind of thought maybe we were fighting a losing battle, but we didn't quit till the last day when Clinton, with a stroke of a pen signed 370,000 acres or something into a national monument. Which of course there's 81,000 acres of private land in that monument. So, so far through the RMPs, through the BLM, things have not changed a whole lot. I will say I think that any of these federal designations possibly hurt the real estate value. Not everybody wants to buy a ranch in the middle of a national monument or a heritage area or anything like that. So, so when this heritage area came on my radar, it was about 5 years ago. We get the Lewistown Argus, and we come in from feeding one day, and we were reading the paper, and right on the front page was a an article that said Fergus County Commissioners say no to heritage area. And my first thought is, what is this about? So I sat down and read the article and had learned that the Big Sky, well, they call them Big Sky Heritage Area back then, and now they're Big Sky Country National Heritage Area. That they had a meeting with Fergus County Commissioners and Phillips County, and they pretty much said they wanted nothing to do with it. And there was a meeting scheduled. By the time we got the paper, there was a meeting scheduled in Fort Benton. So I called around and see if anybody, county commissioners or anybody was attending, and it really wasn't on anybody's radar. So Lisa and I told Lisa, I said, well, we need to go to this and see what it's about. And we sat there for, probably an hour. There was probably 15 to 18 people in the room. It all sounded pretty benign until you start digging into what a heritage area encompasses. And it takes an act of Congress. There's no local authority other than a self-appointed board. These are non-elected officials that just decided to get together, and I think their intentions are well meant. They're trying to promote tourism in the community, but anytime you involve the federal government, especially when the money, it's taxpayer money that through the Department of Interior comes down through the National Park Service. And that really raised a lot of red flags with me. And so, I sat there at the meeting and I listened to it all and had some discussion. And, at that point, I'll just be flat honest. When we walked away from there, I pretty much felt like I was done cooperating with anybody. And the reason was, they just keep coming. From a landowner perspective, is my dad dealt with the wild and scenic. I had to deal with the monument now with this, and it's like, I think I even said at that meeting, I said, if you people, and I said, I'm lumping you all into one group, and maybe that's not fair, but from where I sit, it's us landowners against all you groups. And I just flat said, if you want it so bad, come at me honestly with your checkbook open, and I'll go do something else. And I said, we're done. I'm not cooperating with anybody, as of now. And some of that's been taken care of. The BLM and us still work together, planting trees and doing some things. But, enough is enough. And at some point, you have to draw a line in the sand. And this heritage area to me is just another land grab. And
so, Dana,
yeah.
One of the things that we looked at is, so we start stacking these designations on top of each other. And I think that raises a huge red flag or concern for landowners, as you mentioned. And it seemed like just within the last year or two, they've actually, I think through efforts of yourself and other landowners, have asked this group to have some more public hearings or more public meetings. And I know that you attended a number of those, and we're joined by a number of landowners at those meetings. And what were kind of some of the concerns or thoughts that you heard from other landowners at these meetings, or you shared with this Big Sky Heritage Group?
Well, most of the meetings that I attended, Jay, were I traveled to Belt and to Cascade, and the Big Sky Country National Heritage Area people were there, and they gave their pitch. But I think, and at this time, Jay, when we got organized this fall and having these public meetings, they had already done their feasibility study and claimed that they had overwhelming support for their project. The problem was this this encompasses all of Cascade County, whether you are a rancher or you own a half-acre lot in town, your lawn is going to be in this heritage area. And so it was surprising to learn that less than 2% of the population of Cascade County even knew this was happening, and it had been happening for 5 years. So it was a little hard to believe that they were getting the word out to everybody to attend these meetings that they had previously through the last 5 years. So most people were a lot of people at those meetings were just hearing about it for the first time, either that afternoon by making phone calls, asking people to come and attend, and they had no idea what they were walking into. And then once they found out what it was unanimous that there was probably 80 to 100 people in Cascade at that meeting, and 98% of them were against supporting this heritage area.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned it, but I think it's important to note for our listeners that you did mention Fergus County and Phillips County were in the original footprint of this heritage area. In 2016, I believe it was, both of those counties and their county commissioners voted in opposition of it. And so that footprint did shrink down a little bit to kind of only encompass Cascade County and parts of Choteau County. But landowners cannot remove their property from this footprint. There is not a mechanism for anyone who doesn't want their property included to remove it in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's one of the major concerns we've heard from property owners. And any other insight you've heard, Dana, from those meetings about how receptive that organizing group is in regards to landowner concerns?
What I've heard is I think there's one of these in North Dakota, and it was an opt-in or opt-out. You had the option of a landowner to either be in the heritage area or not. And this is all just conversation. I haven't taken time to look that up personally, but also in conversation with the Big Sky Country National Heritage Area, they were not interested at all in an opt-in, opt-out system. It was either all or nothing. And I'll back up just a minute, Raylee, on that. The original designation 5 years ago actually started at Holter. So it was half of Lewis and Clark, all of Cascade, all of Choteau, parts of Fergus, and parts of Phillips. And I assume Blaine would have been in there too along the river. So, and then they kind of disappeared for a while off of the radar. And then I heard probably a year or two later, they were going to come from Sun River down through Great Falls to Belt, and then up Belt Creek to the ski hill. And I remember calling some board members on the Cascade County Conservation District to attend these meetings. So, and then again, another year kind of went by before we heard about their new proposal of what it is currently today. And the other concern that landowners have, not only is it all inclusive, this board, as I understand how it operates, if they decide to expand at will, they can. And so I think this piece of legislation that we did testified on Friday, I think is a good stepping stone to at least put somewhat of a roadblock up and give the people of Montana some recourse through our elected officials.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So we've kind of covered the highlights of the bill, but just for our listeners, again, this bill would require the state legislature, Montana State Legislature, to approve any designations outside of federal lands that would occur for both national heritage areas or national trail designations. And Dana, you were able to come up to Helena and testify on this bill. The bill was heard on the House side in front of House Natural Resources Committee, and you stood in support of it. That was your first time testifying up in Helena, and we would just love for you to kind of share your experience with our listeners and give your take on, really, it is pretty simple to come and have your voice heard in Helena. So share with us what your thoughts were and your experience.
I think if it's something that you're passionate about and your voice needs to be heard, I thought it was a wonderful experience. I was very impressed by the formality. When you speak, you address the chair and the committee and whichever committee member is asking a question, and they in turn give that respect back to whoever's testifying. Yeah, I thought it was a wonderful experience, and I would encourage anybody that who hasn't done it and wants to get involved to make the effort. So.
And just on that note, I mean, certainly with the session that we're facing this year, you have a couple of options. People can certainly do it through a computer and a Zoom platform virtually, or you can come in person. And once again, I think to our listeners, if anybody is interested in coming to Helena and becoming more familiar with the process, our office is always open to help kind of walk through what the process is and what the protocol is, and maybe what some good talking points are. So we're willing to help any member that has some interest in coming to Helena to testify. We would certainly encourage that and are here to help. So.
Yeah, and I'll add a little quick note on that. My hat goes off to, and everybody should be very thankful for Jay Bodner and Raylee Honeycutt, because after seeing, and I was only there for part of a day, and these two people are there every day during session, working really hard for on behalf of Montana Stockgrowers, but for everybody in the ag industry in Montana. And so my hat's off to you guys, and I really people should really appreciate what you two do on a daily basis. Thank you.
Well, we certainly appreciate you, Dana, and the work you've done as a board member and coming to town and making a big impact on this piece of legislation.
And I think we should also give a shout out to the other organizations that showed up as well. So it's important, and I think it stood out to the committee members in the hearing that it wasn't just agriculture organizations there. We had county commissioners testifying, we had builders association, realtors associations, along with our cooperative ag groups that we work with on a daily basis, all had members or representatives from their organizations there testifying as a united voice in support of this bill, which was really exciting to see.
So Dana, maybe we just talk a little bit about, so at the beginning we mentioned this policy was actually brought forth by you as a member of MSGA, and maybe we'd like you to maybe share with our listeners just the value you find of being a member and dealing with membership issues like this.
Yeah, this was a great avenue for this bill to go through, right through stock growers to make policy. I guess to make policy first at the stock grower state level. All of our satellite affiliates throughout the state are, they're hardworking individuals, and a lot of good policy comes out of our satellite membership. And I was when I first was trying to figure out how to, being new to the board, I guess I've been on there a year, and how to bring this forward, or if I needed my North Central district to bring it, and I talked to them a little bit. And with COVID, it was tough to get a meeting, and Jay Jay just said, well, I think you can bring it yourself. And so I wrote out a rough draft, and Jay helped me finalize it. And anyway, we brought it before our board at year-end meeting, and it overwhelmingly passed. And yeah, I thought it was a very eye-opening experience, and very happy to be a member of Montana Stockgrowers, and also feel very fortunate to be on the board. So
Great. And I think it just also goes to the fact it's important to be not only a member of your local affiliate, but yeah, we very much appreciate those voices being a member of the Montana Stockgrowers Association also. And when we get that collective voice together, we can be very successful when we address these types of issues. So yep, we very much appreciate that kind of effort by members.
yeah, and I fully understood the time and the effort that was going to take to sit on this board. And I'm as busy as anybody else, but when my phone rings and it's somebody in Choteau County or Blaine County or whatever, wanting to know what's going on with stock growers, or what, something about a bill, it's I love to have that interaction and pass those messages on to you or Raylee or somebody and get an answer for them. And so it's just part of kind of what you sign on for. I feel like I'm trying to represent my district, and Brian Ratsburg is the other North Central District, and it's several counties. So I hope I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and trying to get some issues in front of the board and that are concerns to our local area, because as we all know, Montana is a very vast state, and what affects somebody in my area may not affect somebody down in the Dillon country, or vice versa. So I am very, very proud to be. I think we have an excellent board, very diverse, and hopefully we can do some good for the stock growers out there in Montana. So.
Well, and I think this is a great example of what a grassroots initiative can do, and it can, move through the organization, but not only that, move through legislation, and we have the opportunity to make some really great impacts for all citizens of Montana across the state with this designation language. So with that, I did want to kind of follow up on where we're at with the bills. So House Bill 554 did have a hearing on the House side. Since then, it has had its vote on the House floor in both second and third readings and passed the House floor. So now the bill is being transmitted to the Senate. We would anticipate the bill being assigned to a committee and having a hearing in the coming weeks. And then we will do it all over again and bring in folks again to testify in support of the bill in hopes to get this to the governor's desk as soon as possible.
Yeah, it sounds good.
And so with that, I'd like to once again just thank you, Dana, for joining us today and your work on this effort. And it's been a great joint effort, I think, not only with just individuals, but between that and with the association and all the other partner organizations that did supply their support for this. And so it's been a great effort. And with that, we'd like to thank you once again very much for joining us.
You bet. Thank you guys for all you do. Thank you very much.
Once again, I'd like to thank Dana Darlington for the interview and visiting with us. Certainly appreciate his just commitment to this. He's been a very active participant, and he is well supported and well represented the Montana Stockgrowers Association in this effort. So thank you very much, Dana.
And we'd like to just thank you again for listening and remind you to subscribe to The Rancher's Voice. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, and make sure to like, share, and comment on each episode. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody.